TCAM side. It's way too complicated, but here we go. We're going live. You're live. It looks like we are good on YouTube Live right now. We are Straight Facts Homie, joined by the one and only Tony Massarotti of 98.5 The Sports Hub. We're going to record on our end and make this somewhat professional. No, we'll do our best here. Here we go. I'm going to record here. And Walter, on 3, 2, 1, you can also record here.
Sure.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, into the one and only Straight Facts Homie. 60 minutes of NFL talk coming your way, focused on more so the New England Patriots and the future at the quarterback. I'm Mason Souza. There's Walter Spina, John Lyons, and a very, very special guest joining us. He is Tony Massarotti, co-host of the Felger and Massarotti program, the ratings juggernaut over there, the one that runs Boston. Tony, thank you for joining us. It is an absolute pleasure.
Happy to do it, Mason. How you guys doing?
We're doing awesome. We're doing awesome. Also streaming live on YouTube right now. You can join us after the fact. If you're watching this on TCAM TV, find us on YouTube. You can join the conversation there as well on Facebook and Twitter. But let's waste no more time. Let's get right to it. Tony, I want to ask you, let's not beat around the bush. Is there a quarterback competition? Is there a situation where Bailey Zappi, if Mac Jones is ready, obviously the Patriots beat the Browns here, not to bury the lead here, but the lead is actually the quarterback position. Let's be honest. Is Zappi the quarterback the rest of the way?
Hey, so look, Mason, I'm not going to say the rest of the way because, there's a lot of season left. But if you're asking me what I would do right now, and I'm eager to hear what you guys have to say too, but I'd keep him in there. I wouldn't take him out. I thought today he took a jump in a different direction. And so up until now, they've managed him very conservatively. He's been a passenger, for lack of a better word. And, today they needed him to make plays. I mean, if you look at the end result of that game, and I'm a believer and you got to watch. Okay. But if you look at the end result of that game, I think the biggest difference in the game was the quarterback play. I think the Patriots got good quarterback play. The Browns did not. Obviously, the Patriots defense had something to do with that. But they needed Zappi to make plays today, and he did. So they're unbeaten with him as a starter. They nearly pulled out the game in Green Bay, which doesn't look nearly as good as it did, by the way, when they were there, given what's happened to the Packers. Sure. But that aside, I don't see any reason to take him off the field. Do you?
No, I don't see one personally. I mean, until you get Mac Jones healthy enough. And watching this game, it seemed that they were kind of letting, in Denver, they say let Russ cook, but let Zappi cook. I mean, 24 of 34, 17 passes in each half, 309 yards, 2 touchdowns. How long did it take Mac Jones to put up those numbers last year? It almost seemed like he was on a tight leash. And today they're letting Bailey Zappi go. So I don't know if there's some sort of underlying thing where Bailey Zappi's understanding the offense a little more than Mac Jones was through training camp or whatever, or Matt Patricia maybe has a little bit more trust in Zappi. But again, as you said, Tony, the defense played a factor into it. We jumped out, late in this first half, got a touchdown, opened up the scoring in the second half. And from there, it was defense getting stops on Brissett, let Bailey Zappi be a little bit of a front runner to kind of pad those stats. But it just seemed that Bailey Zappi's poised in the pocket, and you don't really see that from a third string quarterback, never mind a rookie, to just be able to make some of the throws he made today. So I don't know if there's something underlying there, but I feel like they're letting more of a leash on a third string quarterback in just his second career start.
Yeah, and I would agree. Like, here's my thing, because I only have a mild case of the Zappi fever. I'm not as into it as maybe others. I'm not quite vaccinated, but I only have a mild case. And my issue is, I think, and Maz, you said this in your original point, they managed him very conservatively. In his first 2 games, 47% of his passing yards were yards after the catch. And today they opened it up a little bit more. They were 8.5 yards per pass attempt today. They pushed it down the field a little bit more, but it still feels like they're trying to be as conservative as possible with him. And part of that's he's young. I get it. But even Mac Jones as a rookie had over 30 pass attempts in his first 3 games. So I think they're trying to manage him conservatively, and it's helped that they played a terrible defense against Detroit. The Browns can't get out of their own way. I mean, look at the last 5 minutes of that game. They can't recover an onside kick that the Patriots aren't ready for. They give up a touchdown right after. But I think Zappy's been solid, but I think the second half today, he was good, but I think he was just solid against Detroit and just solid in the first half today. So I don't know if you feel the same way, but that's why, to me, like, the Zappy fever is fun, but I only have a mild case because I don't think he's come out and blew people's doors off.
No, so look at again, and Mason, I don't know if you were going to jump in, so I'm sorry if I cut you off.
Oh, you go ahead.
But the way I look at it is, again, I thought today it opened up more. So again, going into today, I thought the whole thing with Zappy was pretty conservative. Today was different. It would that looked like their offense. And that could have been Mac Jones at quarterback, and none of us would have batted an eye. In fact, I look at Zappy's 3 games, and again, the numbers are what they are. He only threw 15 passes in Green Bay. But the ratings are 107.4, 100 on the nose. That was Detroit. And then 118.4 today. What's he done wrong? He's done nothing wrong. So, and I'm not saying it's been perfect. Okay. So that's not, I'm just saying overall, you're not going to get a perfect performance from anybody. And again, I thought today they needed him to make throws. They needed him to make plays. He improvised. He had to go through progressions. There was pressure on him at times, and he stood in the face of it and made throws. And I see no reason to change it right now, other than you think somehow you owe something to Mac Jones, or I believe in riding a hot streak. And it feels like they're starting to figure it out with this kid, and he's starting to get it more and more every week. I'd let it go. I wouldn't give Mac Jones the job back if he's ready right now.
You're watching and listening to Straight Facts. So I'm joined by Tony Massarotti, 985 The Sports Hub. Yeah, it seems like we all, maybe a little bit, maybe John lesser than most, but it seems like just a little bit of the Zappy fever. If it's
just
over,
a slight Zappy cold right now.
Just a little shock on John's side. I'm fully electrocuted at this point. I want Bailey because, yeah, like you said, like Maz, you have said on your show in the past or whatever, like what is this? We don't have any. This may sound mean, but there's no loyalty to Mac. He hasn't proven like that's the franchise guy. That's the heir apparent. No, we haven't seen. He had a tremendous rookie year up until Justin Herbert the year before. They're like, oh, that was one of the best rookie seasons that we've seen in quite some time in recent memory. Obviously, the first 3 games of the year have been very subpar, 2 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Look at Bailey Zappe, essentially the same amount of time, 3 games, obviously, a couple possessions into the Packers game. So he's a little bit less than 3 games played now, but 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, the interception off Stonehand's Nelson Aguilar. So the point being, the offense, and, I saw the stat during the game, and this is the big one for me. This is the one that says, okay, things are a little different with Zappe. I'm wondering if you guys saw this and it maybe like went off in your head a little bit. 4 pass catchers, 4 receivers with over 60 yards in this game. The first time that has happened in 5 years, since week 2 of 2017 on the Patriots. So that tells me the offense is much more competent now. We can move the ball and do it in several different ways to several different receivers, and we can have success with it. It's not this 50-50 ball junk, throw it up, and maybe we might get an interception. Maybe we pray for a defensive pass interference. It actually looks like an NFL offense rather than what we saw the first 3 games of the year. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, and the one thing I'm impressed by that we haven't seen Mac Jones do it at all last year, and then now it's happening this year with Bailey Zappe, is he's getting the tight ends involved. Hunter Henry, 7 targets, 4 catches, 61 yards in that touchdown. Jonnu Smith, again, just 2 targets, but he took that 1 catch and rumbled 53 yards for it. So it just seems like Bailey Zappe has some sort of intangibles of getting other guys involved that when you watch Mac Jones, he's almost not getting them involved. Hunter Henry, I think, he started getting going up until when Mac Jones got hurt, but Jonnu Smith again seemed to be a no-show so far this season up until Bailey Zappe stepped in. So again, Bailey Zappe's doing everything right that you're asking him to. He's passing the ball well, not turning the ball over. This is more than just a game manager role, in my opinion. He's getting guys involved, getting the tight ends that you paid this big money to produce, and they're doing just that with a 3rd-string rookie quarterback. So I feel like I'm being swayed right now. I was going to say give the job back to Mac when he shows up, but when he comes back, but you guys are swaying my opinion right now. Keep him in and keep that ball rolling.
Yeah, and look, for me, I think Zappy, as I said, he's been solid, but I got to push back at that he's done nothing wrong. Like you look today, the first quarter, they had a 1st and goal at the 1 on the 3rd down. Hunter Henry's open and Zappy doesn't pull the trigger. Henry eventually gets forced out of bounds and they end up kicking a field goal after having 1st and goal at the 1. Like that's not a good play. Then about 11:45 left in the second quarter, he has back-to-back bad overthrows, one over Devontae Parker's head on the left sideline, the other to Hunter Henry in the right flat. 2 bad overthrows there. He had the intentional grounding penalty late in the game. He did lose a fumble on a strip sack, but I think that was more about Isaiah Wynn just getting smoked, which has been a major problem with the Patriots offense. And I don't think we would be having this conversation if Mac Jones hadn't turned the ball over so much in the first 3 weeks of the year, especially that Baltimore game. That second half, he was bad, right? They had the ball twice with down 31-26. One was an Aguilar fumble. The other, he threw a pick. But I expect Mac Jones to come back and not turn the ball over like that. Now, if he came back and he turned the ball over like he was, then fine. I'd have the conversation and I'd play Zappy. But I don't expect him to come back and just keep turning the ball over like he has. And the other thing, too, that I think is a major piece of this conversation is Matt Patricia has been a lot better the last 3 weeks than he was the opening couple weeks of the year. The offense is using a lot more motion. They're using more play action. It seems like things are designed a little bit simpler for Zappy to read, which is a good thing. But I don't think Mac Jones was getting that advantage. And I know, Tony, you guys have talked on your show about Mac not having the best attitude this August and earlier in the year. And I think that plays part of it too. But I think if Mac comes back into this situation where the offense is kind of rolling now and the coaching has been a little bit better, then I think we see much closer to Mac last year and better than what we saw the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, so look, I look at it this way. They're playing the best offense they've played all year. The synergy between the quarterback and the coaching staff is better than it's been all year long. They've won 2 in a row. They're 3-3. The schedule is going to be soft for the next couple of weeks. Why am I making a change again? Like, so what, just because quote unquote, it's Mac Jones's job. I want to play the guy who's playing better. Like I really look at it that simply. And you're right. I mean, Zappy has made mistakes, of course. And when I say what's he done wrong, I mean, outside of the normal amount of error you would have with a quarterback. When Mac Jones left because of injury, the Patriots basically had the lowest rated quarterback in the NFL. Of guys who had thrown 60 passes, Mac Jones ranked 29th out of 33, and the 4 guys behind him were all stiffs. We're talking about Mitchell Trubisky, and I don't even remember the other garbage that was at the bottom of that list. But
Baker Mayfield, maybe.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield was one of them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're talking about stiffs. This kid's jumped in and it looks like it works. And so I believe in the psychology part of it, which is to say, I think Zappy's got confidence. I think the team now believes in him. The players believe in him. And I think they put a little bit more on his plate every week and he keeps answering it. So keep putting more on his plate. I got nothing against Mac Jones. I mean, the world's not going to, I don't know that it's going to be a drastic change one way or the other. Because honestly, I think that they're probably close to comparable. I would say that Zappy is a similar kind of player. They have different strengths and weaknesses, but they're not, their whole game is built on processing speed and getting the ball out to the right guy. Neither one is. Jones is more athletic. They probably have comparable arms. I'm riding the hot streak. I'm sticking with Zappy.
Again, Tony Massarotti joining us on Straight Facts. Tell me, one thing that has impressed me with Zappy a lot is his ability when things are breaking down around him. And there was a play in this game, and I think, John, you tweeted this, and I was going to tweet the same exact thing as it happened. Like, he stepped up in the pocket, and I'm sure I forget who he found, but he moved around.
It was Tyquan Thornton. He hit him for the first down. Yeah, I think it was on their
in the second half,
last field goal. Oh, there was on the drive that they missed the field goal, but Correct. It was that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that almost seems veteran-esque plays like that. And he made a couple of those against the Lions as well, where he had open room, someone like Mac Jones, not to pick on him, but like Tony, you just said, like more athletic, very well, go ahead, take those 10 yards on the ground. But Zappy is keeping his eyes down the field, and you get 15 yards with a crossing Myers or a Hunter Henry or something like this. Like vet moves that this rookie is playing that have impressed me so far. And I want to go back to you, Maz. I want to ask you this. like, and John actually alluded to it in his last time around, saying that, I don't know if this was the exact word, but maybe a little bit entitlement, a little bit of brattiness. Because, with Mac, I'm curious how that comes across, because I haven't seen it personally. I've only seen, obviously, his press conferences, midweek, post game. I'm wondering how, like, what have you seen from Mac that says, like, to him, he's like, yeah, I'm the cat's ass. This is my franchise. And, like, he needs to maybe be down a peg, because I haven't seen it. I'm wondering where you see that.
Well, look, some of it is, we talked about this on the air the other day. I think some of it is people in and around his camp talk. Okay. Or, I should say whisper. So there's been some, more than a hint of dissatisfaction out there in terms of the change in the coaching staff and what have you. The other thing is, if you go back to a lot of the stuff that was said early in camp about the offense, changing coordinators, he's been very sort of subtle in taking jabs at, and I say subtle, it's very passive aggressive, but, he's made it, like, at one point he said, well, I played quarterback a long time, so I know what works. It's you hear a comment like that and you're like, well, and he had a right to push back. I'm not saying that. But I also think it spilled into his play. I think that he let it affect his performance on the field early in the year. And it was getting better. It got better in the Baltimore game, but he wasn't playing at the level he should have been playing at. And again, some of that's on the Patriots. Maybe the majority of it's on the Patriots for completely upending him with the changes on the staff and putting him under the watch of coaches who never coached offense before. But this kid, Zappe, isn't pushing back. He's doing what they tell him. He's keeping his mouth shut. And I think on some level, Belichick wants to reward that. But look, if Zappe hadn't thrown the ball the way he threw it today, I would say put Jones back in there. Like, this is not a personality thing. It's a performance thing. And they added a little more on the kid's plate. He answered. I mean, he's only thrown one interception in 3 games. Jones has got 5. So Zappe's protected the ball better. They passed the ball better today than I've seen him pass it all year. I keep riding it. I understand he had a lot invested in Mac Jones, and if Mac Jones gets motivated by it, well, that's good too. If he shuts it down and pouts, well, then he was never your guy to begin with.
Yeah, and I think there's element, regardless of who's the starter going forward. I think we've seen some things over the past few weeks that I feel need to really continue. I want to get your guys' thoughts. Ramondre Stevenson has been a big, and part of that's Damian Harris's injury. I get it, but he's been an increasingly larger part of the offense. 175 all-purpose yards last week, the 31-yard touchdown run today. They've also, and Walter, you mentioned this, they've been utilizing the tight ends more and more. Jonnu Smith's 53-yard catch today is the best play he's made as a Patriot. I mean, that's why they paid him $50 million. Unfortunately, it was $1 million a yard so far, but that's why he was brought here, and they've utilized him. Tyquan Thornton coming back, looked good. So I feel going forward, they're in a much better place offensively than they were the first few weeks of the season, especially that Miami game. They looked awful. The Pittsburgh game, they didn't really look that great. They looked better towards the end. But I think what they need to take a lot of these elements that have been working with Zappe and use them going forward, whoever is the quarterback, because it seems like after 4 or 5 weeks, Patricia's finally found some formulas that seem to work for them.
Yeah, and I'm kind of just looking down the records of other teams in the AFC, and I agree. If they can just keep doing what's been working for them, they've got a bit of a cupcake schedule next Monday against the Bears. They're in New York against the Jets, who are playing good football, but anything can happen there. Then you're home against the Colts, and again, the Colts are another hot and cold team. So, Maz, I want to ask you about kind of the rest of the AFC, the outlook at it, and the Patriots sit at 3-3. They've got a 3rd-string quarterback. Cupcake schedule. They could get to 5-3, possibly 6-3. And with the rest of the AFC, teams that we thought were going to be good on paper have been underwhelming. Look at those teams in the AFC West: the Broncos, the Raiders. The Chargers are getting set to kick off. They've won 2 straight, but I don't think they've looked as good as they could have. The Ravens and Bengals are both 3-3. Is this kind of the best case scenario for the Patriots right now, where they're 3-3, they're right in the thick of things because of all these teams that we touted as top teams in the AFC kind of being underwhelming through the first 6 weeks of the season? And again, still early in the season, but I mean, the Patriots are still right in the thick of things. So I don't know if you feel like this is the best case scenario for them. They can still improve, or how does how's the AFC look to you?
Oh, definitely weaker than I thought. I mean, I think definitely weaker than we all thought. So in that way, I would say absolutely a best case scenario. I mean, Denver is bad. Offensively, they're atrocious. Indianapolis, I got a Frank Reich thing. I like Frank Reich. So, they pulled it out today. I think that's a flawed team. I'm not a huge Matt Ryan guy, but I still think Indy's going to be right around where you are, in terms of the Patriots. The bad news in all this is that the conference is weaker. The division might be better. Mm-hmm. So Miami's been banged up at quarterback. Obviously, Buffalo's loaded, but Miami's good. They beat the Patriots in week 1. I know it was a while ago, but when they're all healthy, it's a good team. I don't know if they're great, but they're good. And the Jets are clearly better than everybody thought. So, they're 4-2. The Patriots are still hovering near the bottom of the division. In fact, they're in last place. So, now again, do I think they're in it? Yes. And the big thing to me is, again, I come back to the same question. Why am I making a change back to Mac Jones? Why am I doing that? Because he's the incumbent. And if someone says he's a better player, not this year, he hasn't been. I mean, so until that goes back the other way, I don't see a reason to make a move. But to your question about the conference, absolutely. The Jets games now to me get a lot more interesting. They should kill the Bears. The Patriots should absolutely kill the Bears. And then the Indy game, to me, that one's here, right? That's in Foxborough.
Yeah.
Yes.
So to me, the Patriots got to win that one. And I think Bill Belichick is going to have Matt Ryan's head spinning.
Yeah. Take him back to the Super Bowl, just like he did Jared Goff a week ago. So the only thing, and Maz, you make an excellent point. Like you said, you're not tied to Mac Jones, and it's as simple as play the better guy. Right now, Zappe, it seems like he has outperformed Mac Jones this year, just by like the numbers you mentioned: 4 touchdowns for Zappe, 5 interceptions for Mac, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How he looked today, getting multiple people involved with over 60 yards a game. Looking forward, and this goes into Walter's point. Now, all of a sudden, this is a year where all of a sudden we're going to compete for the playoffs. I personally, at the start of the year, I'm like, this is not a playoff team. Based on the other 15 in the conference, there's only one 5-1 team now. The Bills, obviously, in your division. It's so wide open that you can't mess around. You have to know who's going to be in the best position for your team. As Bill Belichick loves to say, best position for our team, or whatever. We do what's best for the team. Who is going to be the best quarterback? So going forward, does this cause something in the locker room, perhaps, of like, say, if Zappe goes 2 more weeks, he struggles a week, kind of like what Brian Flores did with Tua last year. If you remember, he yanked him every time. He seemed like he threw an interception, went to, what was it, Fitzpatrick? Was he still playing? Whoever was going. It was very strange. And obviously Flores, they got double back-to-back winning seasons out of him for the Dolphins for the first time in 20 years. So, that's just an example. Could Bill Belichick play this card where if Zappe all of a sudden fails in 3 weeks, does it go back to Mac? If Mac plays well a week, bad another one, does it go back to Zappe? Is that a recipe for failure? Could that work? I'm curious if that's the kind of dice game Bill Belichick will play down the stretch here.
So Mason, it's a good question. Okay, because again, the last thing you want to do is start playing musical chairs with your quarterback, right? Then all of a sudden a guy makes a mistake. Now you switch again. So I get it, and that's a fair point. I would say, you sort of make that one on the fly. And look, if you ask me what Bill Belichick is going to do, my guess is that he goes back to Mac Jones. Okay. My guess is it goes that way. It's the safer move, and the gap between the two players isn't huge. Okay. So it's certainly not as big as we thought. If you ask me, do I think Mac Jones is a more talented player? I would say yes. But I do believe in sort of the whole synergy of it, like the way it looks, the way it works, and I mean that with the coaching staff and the roster. And I like the way it looks right now. Today, I thought it looked pretty good. And so now as long as you keep winning and the team responds and you don't see any pattern of breakdown in Zappy's game. And then you just keep playing him. So again, if you're asking me today who I'm picking, it's Zappy. What do I think Belichick's going to do? I think he'll go back to Jones. But what do you think is going to happen? Like, Mason, when you say you don't want to play, the musical chairs thing. Let's say they put Jones back in, but he doesn't play well. What happens?
There's a lot of clamor.
Yeah. I think
you got that either way now.
I think that's the huge point is whoever they stick with, whether they stick with Zappy or they go back to Jones, eventually they're going to have a bad game and they're going to struggle. And then what's the pressure to make a switch there? So, and I think it's easier to switch to Jones. And if he has a bad game, stick with him than it is keep Zappy in. And all of a sudden, if he starts struggling, you go to Jones. But then if Jones struggles after, you go back to Zappy. So that's part of the reason too. Like, I personally think Mac Jones is just a little bit better of an option right now. And I think you're right. There's not a huge gap right now, but I think it's also, as you mentioned, it's a little safer to go back to Jones too, because I think if Jones struggles, it's all right. Well, this is your guy. He played, you have a whole year of work last year that he played pretty well, 3,800 yards passing, rookie of the year conversation for a while. Whereas Zappy, if he struggles, it might be, oh, well, he just played 2 bad defenses and now teams have figured him out. So I think that makes it really, really difficult. And it's almost a tough situation where once you pick one of them, you got to stick it out through a bad performance or two. Because as you said, the musical chairs game is never a winner.
Yeah, I think it ends up as a double-edged sword. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you go back to Zappy, there's going to be people that are wanting Jones. You go back to Jones and he doesn't perform well, people are going to be wanting Zappy. So that's really just my additional comment. You're pretty much damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, it's just I think like no matter who plays now, you're going to get the second guessing because Zappy's been good enough where we now have this question, right? So I think Bill's going to go back to Jones. But like when we say Zappy's played well against bad teams, who did Jones play well against last year? Like, most of the damage in Jones's games came against the Jets and Jacksonville. I mean, in those 3 games, the Patriots scored, did they get 50 in 2 of them? They got 50 against Jacksonville.
Both of those games.
50 in both. And then he also played well against a depleted Cleveland and Tennessee team. But to your point, a lot of injuries for those teams too. Right.
So to me, you sort of come back now and you say, okay, then I got to go to the eyeball test or my gut and say, what am I going to do here? And again, I think for the reasons you guys are talking about, I think Bill will go back to Jones because it's the clearer, safer, more expected decision. In other words, the team will think, okay, it's Mac's team. Zappy did a good job filling in. That's the way it was set up. That's what we're going to stick with. If he switches to Zappy, it's then harder to switch back in a snap of a finger. And also it allows Bill to say, well, look, the first 3 games we weren't in sync yet. Now we are. Zappy benefited from that. So let's see what it looks like with Mac. And then if it's not good with Mac, then I know that I got to put Zappy in, right? Like there's still some unknown there in terms of how good it would look with Mac if Jones is bought in and you're getting the same sort of execution, minus all those ridiculous penalties, by the way. But you know what I mean? In the passing game, if all of a sudden it looks like it did today with Jones in there, then Bill can say, okay, it had more to do with the offense and the coaching and the pieces around him than it did with Zappy. So I think by going back to Jones, it allows Bill to make an apples to apples. But again, I wouldn't disrupt it. I think they got a good thing going right now. I wouldn't mess with it.
You mentioned the pre-snap penalties. Like if you put that into account as well, that was one of their most undisciplined games in recent memory, and they still killed them. And they still killed the Browns. So, the Browns also threw up on themselves, which is what the Browns do in the end. A couple minutes with Tony Massarotti on Street Facts. Homie here, already 30 minutes at this point. But I have one final, if I may.
Sure.
Maybe, I'm sure this will be discussed at some point during the week on your show, possibly. But to go grocery store magazine question. Robert Kraft, congratulations, got married over the weekend. If you happen to see that legendary photo, there was one, Drew Bledsoe was there. Randy Moss was there. A bunch of current Patriots are there. Tom Brady skipped Bucks practice to be there. I didn't happen to see Bill Belichick there. You make anything out of that? I found that kind of strange.
So I'll tell you what, the photo, I saw the photo too. Were they all players in the photo?
I think
believe
For the
so.
most part, yeah.
I
So
believe
do we have any confirmation that Bill was at the wedding?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So that would be weird. If they all went and Bill, now again, well, I should also say this though. Troy Brown was there, right?
I don't know for
Wasn't
sure.
Troy Brown in that photo?
Let me pull this up.
I think he's in the front left, Mason. If you
Okay.
can find the photo, check it out. I think that's Troy Brown in the front left, if I remember right, because a lot of those guys were. So this is what I was going to ask. All the guys who were in the photo, the former players and whatnot, none of them are on the current team. In other words, or staff. So the current guys were all in Cleveland for the game.
I see
Like Ty Law, Troy
David
Brown.
Andrews was there, so current player.
Okay, so David Andrews was there. All right, well then that blows that argument out of the water.
Well,
Before he's
it was
there.
a Friday night wedding, and they didn't travel till Saturday to Cleveland. And
Oh,
Friday is
right. So right, the photos from Friday night. That's right.
And Friday is typically the lightest day on a coach's schedule in the NFL. So you'd think he could, especially if Troy Brown's there, you would think Bill would at least be invited and hopefully be there, But hey, Brady
love
lost to the
this.
Steelers today. So maybe, score one for Bill on the long-term scoreboard after this weekend. I don't know.
There are
So that, I
19
tell you what, I want to know. Look, the same thought occurred to me. I just assumed he was there and he wasn't in the photo because, I tend to think that way because I'm an idiot. I'm naive.
I'm sorry to keep up for interrupting. I mean, on page 6 here, there's 19 photos. Bill Belichick is in none of these. None of these.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I guess it sounds like Kraft got over Brady not mentioning the Patriots in his retirement post because he let him come to the wedding. So must be all set.
They've
Water
kissed
under
and
the
made
bridge.
up apparently. So I don't know what's a better story. If Bill was invited and didn't go, or if he wasn't invited at all. Like,
Wow.
I will go with the second thing. I think him not being invited is way better than him being invited and not going.
Oh, him not being invited is like Brady locking the TB12 facility on Garoppolo. It's like the same thing. Just
Oh,
don't
I'd
wanna-
that
say a
is
little bit more than
fabulous.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's something to look forward into. Too. Yeah, I have not seen anywhere of Bill Belichick in attendance at the wedding. Yeah, friggin' Roger Goodell is there. I'm like, what is this?
Oh.
But obviously
Al
he works for
Michaels.
him. Al
Yeah.
Michaels was there. What is going
Yeah.
on? Everyone but one who passed, tied George Hallis at
Yeah,
324.
Papa
Yeah,
Bear.
yeah.
I bet
Papa-
you Daniel Snyder wasn't there either, Mason. That'd be my guess.
Probably not. No.
Jerry Jones, one who has many great things to say about Kraft, I'm sure was there as well. You guys have anything else before we say goodbye to Maz?
I'd like to ask Maz one more actual football question because
sure.
we spent.
What is that?
Sorry, I know, but we've spent this whole time talking about Zappy Fever. But the Patriots defense has been awesome these past few weeks. I mean, even in Lambeau, they played pretty well against Aaron Rodgers, which I know the Packers offense is not what it was, but they shut out Detroit, which was the highest scoring offense in the league at the time. I thought they played really well in Cleveland today, especially their defensive line. I mean, Dietrich Wise and Matt Judon are combined for 10 sacks. Nick Chubb only had 33, so he had 23 rushing yards on their field goal drive late in the third. He only had 33 rushing yards the rest of the game. So what do you make of how well the Patriots defense is playing right now? Because I think that's a big part of them being able to manage Zappy conservatively because they're playing so well on defense. So do you think this is something that is going to be able to sustain itself? And do you think their defense is better than it was a year ago?
So good question. And the defense is something that I relate to the soft schedule. Because I think that Jared Goff to me is a complete mental case. If you blitz him, he turns into a puddle, which is exactly what the Patriots did. They were effective today again against Brissett, who, by the way, does he have a knee injury or something in his left knee? Because he looked like to me like he was wearing a brace. He's not moving right. I don't remember who, or at least he's not moving like he did when he was here, and that was a long time ago. But he used to be faster.
Yeah.
And now to me, it looks like he doesn't have the same kind of mobility he had earlier in his career. And I thought Brissett was horrible in that game today. So do the Patriots play good disciplined defense? Yes. But I will also tell you that, Baltimore put up 37 on him. And so, I still worry about their ability to defend good offenses. And I know Detroit had good numbers coming in here, but I just think so little of Jared Goff that I can't. So I'm not sold on the defense yet. I think they will make bad teams look pathetic. But to me, it's all about what you can do against teams that have, multiple weapons to defend. Because let's face it, today is really just about Nick Chubb, and that's it.
Mhm.
I mean, you take Nick Chubb out of the game, now all of a sudden Brissett's got to throw, and they're not going to let Cooper beat him. So now what? They have nowhere else to go. And I'm not sure Detroit had all that many weapons either when you really get to it. Amon-Ra St. Brown it is, right? He wasn't, he wasn't healthy for that game. They doubled Hawkinson. They were missing the other back there, DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
So they caught them at a good time. But I just don't think much of those two quarterbacks. So I need to see him do it against a better quarterback. And we're not going to see that anytime soon.
Yeah. So I just one additional comment. It seems like they're kind of going on that same trajectory that they were last year. Slow start, get that cupcake schedule in the middle. Everyone's going to buy in. All these fans, heads are going to be huge, and Patriots are going to win it all. Blah blah whatever. And then they're going to hit that schedule at Thanksgiving, where we'll see how Minnesota's playing. Then you've got Buffalo twice. They should beat the Cardinals. We'll see if the Raiders turn around the Bengals. So they're going to get to this cupcake schedule. Maybe they're above 500 at that point, and then reality is going to strike, and maybe we'll see the real Patriots down the stretch. So again, these could be confidence boosting wins, but ultimately they're going to hit that grind of a schedule in late November, and we'll see how things play out. Do they click the playoff spot? I'm not sure. So,
we all took the cheese last year, and then down the stretch, they get their asses kicked.
Yep.
Right.
So, I need to see it against good competition before I start to get, before I get all giddy.
Yeah, I'm with you.
One thing that makes me mildly optimistic is the leader of the boogeymen is not there any longer. So the guy that kind of feels themselves and said, yeah, we can take on everyone. And then, as you guys just mentioned, you hit the brick wall the final 5-6 games of the year. He is Tony Massarotti, giving us plenty of time on Straight Facts, homie, talking Patriots, talking conspiracy with the coach and the owner, obviously the quarterback situation. Wants to go with Zappy, but believe Bill goes with Mac. He'll talk about it and more on 98.5 The Sports Love Telegram Maz Show. To find him at 2:00 on the app. I'm doing like a 98.5 The Sports Love advertisement for you here, but
thank you for that, Mason.
No, absolutely, no problem. Check will be in the mail. But we appreciate you taking the time. For everybody else, let's move on. Third quarter, Straight Facts, homie.